Let's begin with the foundations. Let's discuss Leandro Paredes. This is another lecture. I am Alexei, a professor by trade, and today we will, as it were, perform a controlled experiment in biography and tactics. We shall observe how an Argentine defensive midfielder becomes a hinge in systems that span Boca Juniors, Europe, and the national team.
Hi, I'm Priyanka. I work with the professor and, I tend to ask the questions that make us slow down a little, hopefully in a helpful way.
To frame our discussion, Leandro Daniel Paredes is an Argentine professional footballer, primarily a defensive midfielder, currently representing Boca Juniors in the Argentine Primera División and the Argentina national team. It's important to understand the role. A defensive midfielder screens the back line, interrupts passing lanes, and manages the tempo from deep. In simpler terms, he is both firewall and metronome. He breaks what must be broken and times what must be timed. In this context, we observe that Paredes thrives in four linked tasks: ball recovery, distribution under pressure, positional discipline to protect the center backs, and the initiation of build-up play that converts defense into structured possession, plus a set-piece dimension. He has scored direct free kicks, and crucially, he has proven reliable in penalty shootouts for Argentina, which elevates his value in knockout football.
So, when we say recycling possession and initiating build-up, can we say that for Paredes it means taking a loose or pressured ball and turning it into something clean, like a safe first pass that resets the team shape, and then occasionally adding the surprise, like that free kick goal in Liga for PSG against Strasbourg in April 2021?
Exactly. The technical literature would call it phase orchestration. He closes one phase by recovering or intercepting, then opens the next with a low-risk, high-information pass that lets the team breathe. His set-piece competence and shootout composure are, if you will, bonus modules installed on a primarily defensive platform. Moving forward, why does this matter? Because modern football is won as often in high-pressure micro-events as in the flowing moments. Paredes converted decisive penalties in the Copa America in 2021 and in the 2022 World Cup quarterfinal and final shootouts. This indicates repeatable nerve under stochastic stress. Moreover, his bilingual background, including fluent Guarani through his Paraguayan heritage, broadens dressing room communication and fan connection, a non-trivial variable in national teams and cosmopolitan clubs.
Isn't it interesting how language can reduce friction? You know, a quick word in Guarani or Spanish at the right moment might lower the temperature or build trust. That's hard to quantify, but we feel it in team culture.
Next, let's explore a few anchor points. First, a memorable symmetry. He scored his first PSG goal in January 2020, exactly 1 year after signing, and he did so while wearing the captain's armband in a Coupe de France match. Second, as noted, he is of Paraguayan descent and speaks Guarani, which is rare among elite Argentine internationals, and thus socially salient.
And for the timeline. He debuted for Boca Juniors in the league at age 16 in November 2010, which is, very early responsibility. The other bookend is 2022, when Argentina won the World Cup and Paredes contributed in those shootouts, including the final against France.
Well, a brief personal note. I admire his composure and leadership signals, especially the ability to execute from the spot when physiology and psychology conspire against clarity. As students of decision-making under pressure, we can infer that repetition, routine, and role clarity make courage look deceptively simple. Let's proceed to the next point. 3 big questions will guide us. First, a historical question. Why was Paredes not included in Argentina's final 23-man squad in 2018 after making the preliminary 35? Second, a counterfactual. What if he had not ignited the benchside incident against the Netherlands in the 2022 quarterfinal? Third, a present-day question. How will his return to Boca Juniors shape team dynamics and future trajectories? On to our next point, question 1. In 2018, Jorge Sampaoli's selection logic had to reconcile competing priorities: tournament experience, tactical flexibility, and fitness profiles under time constraints. Paredes was named in the preliminary pool, but ultimately not among the final 23, which indicates that at that moment the staff preferred other midfield profiles for the specific game models they anticipated in Russia. This is, in selection theory, a problem of constrained optimization, rather than a referendum on long-term quality.
I've been wondering about this. Was it mainly competition in central midfield? Or maybe uncertainty about how much responsibility he would carry in a World Cup knockout setting at that age and stage of his club career?
Arguably both. The depth chart was crowded, and coaches often favor pre-existing partnerships and risk-minimizing continuity. Paredes had the tools, but the staff's forecast evidently weighted other attributes more heavily for that specific tournament. Such choices are path-dependent. They include injury hedging, set-piece planning, and late-camp form impressions.
What if we thought about it like this? Did that exclusion turn into fuel? Did it change his arc in a way we can trace afterward?
We observe a resilient response. By 2019, he was in the Copa America squad and named to the team of the tournament. In 2021, he helped Argentina win the Copa America, converting in the semi-final shootout. In 2022, he was integral to the World Cup campaign, including decisive penalties in the quarterfinal and final shootouts. And he remained present through 2024's Copa America and the 2026 run to the final. Selection resilience, then, is the proper descriptor. The 2018 omission appears as a temporary local minimum before the global peak. Let's transition to another aspect. Question 2. The 2022 quarterfinal with the Netherlands became, to put it mildly, emotionally charged. Paredes fouled Nathan Ake and then struck the ball into the Dutch bench, triggering a confrontation. After extra time, the match went to penalties, and he converted his attempt. Argentina advanced and later won the tournament.
I'm curious about the counterfactual. If he hadn't sparked that moment, do we think the match would have been calmer and maybe tactically tidier? Or did the heat actually sharpen Argentina's edge?
Theoretically, altering one high-energy event can change subsequent states, but not always in linear fashion. The incident likely increased arousal levels for both teams. For Argentina, it may have produced a protective cohesion effect, a classic us-against-them dynamic. For the Netherlands, it arguably added urgency that helped force extra time. In stochastic contests, volatility can both endanger and empower. Here, the eventual shootout rewarded those with rehearsed nerve, and Paredes delivered.
Building on that, do these flashpoints have long-term costs or benefits? Reputation, officiating attention, even later disciplinary scrutiny?
It is worth noting that such moments contribute to a competitive persona that can galvanize teammates yet attract scrutiny. Reports around the 2026 World Cup final loss to Spain, for instance, summarized a post-match altercation involving Paredes and Spanish players, and described ensuing disciplinary attention toward the federation. Accounts can vary until formal findings, but the general lesson stands. Intensity is an asset that must be metered. Calibrate the flame. Do not extinguish it. On to our next point. Question 3. Paredes' trajectory back to Boca Juniors is structurally interesting. After early years at Boca, he moved through Italy with Chievo, Roma, and Empoli, then to Zenit St. Petersburg, then to Paris Saint-Germain, with a loan to Juventus, a return to Roma in August 2023 for a reported fee in the region of approximately 4 million euros, and finally a homecoming to Boca in July 2025, reportedly taking the number 5 shirt, the classic holding midfielder emblem at the club. We should note that reported fees and numbers can be fluid across outlets, but the symbolism is clear.
So yeah, moving on. What impact can we expect at Boca? Like day to day, on the pitch, and in the dressing room?
Fundamentally, experience becomes a public good. At Boca in 2025, he logged 18 appearances and a goal across competitions, followed by 21 appearances and 3 goals in 2026, including continental minutes. We can infer 3 vectors of influence. First, tempo control and set-piece threat in tight domestic and continental fixtures. Second, leadership signaling, given prior captaincy trust at PSG in a cup tie and repeated reliance by Argentina in shootouts. Third, knowledge transfer to younger midfielders, which compounds over a season.
To shift gears a bit. What are the reintegration challenges? Different rhythms, travel, officiating styles, expectations at a club like Boca?
Clearly, the Argentine calendar imposes frequent travel and emotionally charged derbies. Officiating thresholds differ from Europe. Tactical adaptation is required to manage risk while preserving bite. Expectations for a returning world champion are, by default, non-linear. This suggests fruitful research. Comparative studies of returnees to formative clubs, expectation performance gaps, and the role of set-piece value in leagues with narrower average margins. To summarize, Paredes is a defensive midfielder in the classical sense, screening the backline and setting tempo, with the added benefit of set-piece and penalty reliability. We examined 3 questions: the 2018 non-selection as a local minimum before subsequent peak, the 2022 incident as a volatility spike that Argentina ultimately harnessed, and the Boca return as a leadership and tactics infusion with manageable integration costs. For further study, consider how multicultural fluency, including his Guarani, shapes cohesion and communication in elite squads. This then completes our present analysis. Thank you for listening, and as always, stay curious and keep your notes tidy.
Thank you, Professor. And thank you all for spending this time with us. That was helpful to think through, actually.